Yo, this your boy Dexter Williams, running back for Green Bay, and you're listening to Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. Tune in, baby. Go Pack, go.
Welcome into another episode of the Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. It is Saturday, May 8th. We got the whole squad back together. Big episode here. Episode 53. We're talking rookie running backs for 2019. A little bit of dynasty talk, a little bit of redraft talk. I'm feeling really happy to have Landon back from Europe. We got Mark and Scott in the building after a couple weeks off. Had James Coe on the podcast. Really fun, but really just appreciative of you guys being here and wherever you are and however you may be listening. Me, Scott, Landon, Mark, really happy that you're with us. Boys, it's been a minute since we've been together. Landon, you've been away. We've never had a four-man podcast since the snack draft. So let's crank this thing up. Let's have some fun.
I am so excited to be back, guys. I've been dying to talk football ever since I left. I was pretty much on a plane when the second round of the NFL draft happened, so I haven't had a chance to actually talk to you guys about it. So today we're talking about rookie rankings, all the 2019 rookies. We've all done our rankings, and I'm excited to see where you guys stand. How's everyone else doing?
Well, I'm excited to be here with the whole crew. As you said, it's been not since the days of PC brand barbecue chips that I've been able to chirp all three of you at the same time. So very excited on this end.
I'm just going to go with it right now. Scott, your nickname is the Emperor.
You know what? That works, and this Emperor has clothes.
Mark, what's going on with you, pal?
Yeah, I'm pretty fired up. It's Victoria Day weekend coming right up, which is just it means a lot of things. It kind of speaks to like the opening of summer up here, and I mean, great to have you back, Landon. We missed you. We made some great episodes without you, but we missed your takes and yeah, let's talk some RVs today. I'm thinking RVs.
Yeah.
Can we hold on real quick? Going into Victoria Day long weekend, I don't think I've ever felt this down about the weather. Like, can we just get a sunny day this weekend? It feels legitimately like we're going back into October here. I don't know about you guys, but like we're in Canada, a couple of us in Southern Ontario, like Toronto area, a couple of us Northern Ontario. It's just been goddamn miserable.
Well, the benefit is there's playoff football right around the corner, and I'm looking forward to it.
That's what it feels like it should be.
Yeah, it's been okay up here. I did get out and play some golf on the weekend, and while the courses are a little bit wet, it's better than being inside, which we had a lot of, and we always do every winter in the north. So I'm not complaining too much. We had some sun today, a couple warm days through the week, and yeah, I can't be complaining at all. Even if it's supposed to be raining all weekend while I go on a camping trip, I cannot be complaining.
How about Brooks Koepka today? Opening round of the PGA. Just goes out for a little stroll, shoots 63.
Unbelievable. And all the signs on Instagram are showing that this is an extremely difficult golf course. If you're not very good, you should not be playing. And then Brooks Koepka just lights it up.
What an absolute man rocket.
He's a cool guy.
Tiger was not looking so hot.
No. So listen, if you guys been keeping up with us on social, we're on Instagram at Saturday Morning Snap. We're also on Twitter. Now that we've got 4 handles, we are just going to put them in the episode link below. You can get our main channel on Twitter at SMS_fantasy. If you want to keep up with the boys individually, find their handles down there. We're also on Facebook, facebook.com/Saturday Morning Snap. Any news to report here? I know we had some non-fantasy related news, but something to do with Patrick Peterson.
Yeah, Mark, take this one.
Yeah, Patrick Peterson is he's going to miss some time, and he's a great player. He was found to have some PEDs in his system, unfortunately, and will be missing 6 games. He is, while he's not a fantasy relevant guy, he is an electric player and a huge part of that team in Arizona. So, you hate to hear that about great players. So, if you are the type of guy that would have him as an IDP, he may have gotten some points in the past as a return man. But yeah, excellent player going out for a suspension.
So feel free to just let it fly on Arizona the first 6 weeks because they got no shutdown corner. So listen, we've done our rankings here for the rookie running backs for 2019. We're going to do our absolute best to give you as much information as we can, our personal opinions. We have our consensus ranking amongst the 4 of us. Just coming out of the gate, this is going to be very dynasty related, more long-term value these rankings are based on. I think out of the 4 of us, we can all agree that for redraft purposes, Josh Jacobs and David Montgomery are the 2 backs that probably see the field and have the most, fantasy relevant seasons out of the guys that we're going to be talking about today. So just keep that in mind. Josh Jacobs in Oakland and David Montgomery in Chicago, the 2 backs that we would sort of support as redraft pieces. Everybody else would probably be more of a long-term dynasty play, a couple seasons to develop a role. So without further ado, let's kick it off. Clean sweep across the board. We've got Josh Jacobs out of Oakland, our number 1 ranked running back. Landon, why don't you break this one down for us? What makes Josh Jacobs so special? Why is he the number 1?
There's a couple things. Definitely the draft pedigree. The Oakland Raiders took him in the first round, and he was touted as the number 1 running back coming out as well. He's a guy that can do it all. This league is going into a pass-friendly to the running back league where you see like Alvin Kamara, David Johnson, Todd Gurley, these running backs that can catch 100 balls, run for 1,000 yards, receive for 1,000 yards, do it all. And that's what Josh Jacobs is. The only knock on him is that he doesn't have a lot of college production. So
right.
that's where the critics really go.
They're
hard.
all in on him on that.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see what happens in Oakland and see if he can sustain a heavy workload. And he's going number 1 or number 2, depending on what your needs are at the position in rookie drafts anyways. And then he's going at one of the first picks in redraft leagues as well. So it shows that he should be valuable this year.
Yeah, I mean, not one of the first picks for redraft, but essentially, I think Josh Jacobs
first rookies.
Yeah, first rookie. Yeah, no, I think Josh Jacobs certainly warrants a top 20 pick for running back in a redraft league just based on opportunity alone.
That's right.
And I think opportunity is probably why we have him ranked so high, is that him and David Montgomery get to step into starting roles come 2019. Mark, is there anything else that you can piggyback on Landon that we didn't talk about? I mean, opportunity is huge.
That is the key factor here for him. But the question I have is, what stake of the backfield belongs to him between the other kind of mentor players that John Gruden has spoken are going to be there for him, between Jalen Richard and Doug Martin. Who knows what stake they're going to be having in it, and if he's going to be the first one to take the first handoff of the year. It's I think that's an accurate take to say maybe top 20 in redraft, but hands down number 1 in the Dynasty League drafts.
Absolutely. Now, do you think it comes down to team need with Josh Jacobs, like, top pick in a dynasty, rookie draft? Would you say that Josh Jacobs is the clear-cut one over, say, N'Keal Harry? Or do you think it's based on team need?
I think it's based on team need here, but you know what? I want to hear what Scott has to say.
I would agree completely. I don't know if Josh Jacobs is necessarily a dynasty defining player, so to speak. So really, the great thing about dynasty leagues and building a dynasty team is I'd say everybody's approach to the draft will be drastically different. I know personally in my dynasty league, I have Le'Veon Bell, McCaffrey, and Rashad Penny. So it's the type of thing where my targets already, are pretty clear cut. So if it was me, Jacobs is further down the list, and I don't know if I'd be willing to take the risk of passing over this really deep wide receiver draft that we just had, just to take the clear cut number one running back on the board.
Right.
I think he'll have a ton of opportunity there with the Raiders, and that's what makes him the most attractive with his mentor players being at such a elevated age. But, compared to the other players that will be in this rookie draft, if you need a good wide receiver for the future, there's a lot of them, and it's going to be really hard to pass on some of those guys to take a running back. But it is very specific, and if you need a running back, boy, are you going to get this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one thing that was mentioned that Josh Jacobs has that pass catching ability in his profile, whereas his counterpart, Damian Harris, was the better back in college, teammates. But Josh Jacobs is in a better situation. He's not in a crowded backfield in New England like Damian Harris is, and he's got pass catching in his profile. So he's going to come in and supplant guys like Jalen Richard and I believe Doug Martin. I know that they just signed him, but I feel like Doug Martin's more of an insurance piece than anything else. So I think Josh Jacobs is locked and loaded, ready to go, ready to work come week one. And I think that we all kind of share that mentality. That's why he's so high, the clear-cut one for us. But pivoting to Chicago, we've got David Montgomery. He is our number 2 consensus. We're all number 2 except for Landon, who is 3. And when we get to Miles Sanders next, Landon, I'll let you make the case for Miles Sanders over David Montgomery. But I'm going to flip this one over to Scott and give us some positives for David Montgomery, why you think he warrants the number 2 selection.
Well, when you're looking at the Chicago Bears this year, I think you're looking at a team that really wants to run. I think they've seen Mitchell Trubisky, for what he is, and thus far, I'd call him a capable game manager. Maybe this year he'll break out into a bit more of a leader who likes to air it out a bit more. But when you look at their receiving core and whatnot, I see them really taking a run first approach this year. And when you look at the running backs in that stable, you've got Tariq Cohen, who he has his gadget tendencies and that great little niche he's carved out for himself there, Mike Davis, and then Montgomery. Out of those 3, I think it's a great situation for Montgomery to really make a push to be the lead back, the real bell cow, because we know Tariq Cohen isn't going to become your bell cow back. Mike Davis, he has week to week, I'd say he's a serviceable back. But if you're gonna give opportunity to one of these 3 to really lead this franchise in the backfield for the next 5 years, I really think they're going to make the push for Montgomery. And he was number 1 on my rankings before landing spots got flipped there and the injuries and whatnot in Oakland. So I really think that Montgomery has a great shot at being productive, at least the latter half of this season, because Tariq Cohen, I don't think, is going to fight you for fantasy relevancy. He's going to take his carries and his screens and whatnot, and it'll leave enough carries for another legitimate number 1 running back.
Yeah, I mean, he's used in a different part of the offense. He's got that big playability, but he does get it done in sort of like the check down in the screen game. He's not going to be
absolutely.
He's not going to be jumping through bodies and breaking tackles like the way that David Montgomery or Mike Davis will.
Yeah, you've seen that there's a lot of offenses that can run that way, that it is more than okay for fantasy owners to have one of those check down running backs that will come in catch a ball here and there, get their yards, and then get off the field for your player to come in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. And I think some pluses for David Montgomery is if we look back to his college production, I mean, coming out of college, he's used to that NFL style bell cow workload. The last 2 seasons in college at Iowa State, 258, 257 carries, almost 300 total touches. I think that's great to see. I mean, that's the biggest knock, like Landon said, on Josh Jacobs. He's coming in with an unproven workload, and to see a guy like David Montgomery, who's already been conditioned to get the ball that many times, and so on and so forth, I think is it's reassuring. It's nice to see in Chicago. I think that it'll be nice to have somebody that gets it done, unlike Jordan Howard was able to do. I'm not big on Jordan Howard going to Philly, and I think Landon will probably speak to that when he talks about Miles Sanders. But yeah, just having that workload already established for David Montgomery is a great thing for him to bring to the table in Chicago, I think.
Yeah.
So why don't we flip it over to Miles Sanders? He comes in at number 3, and Miles Sanders out of Penn State coming to the Eagles. He's not Saquon Barkley. We've already kind of talked about that and established that. He's our consensus 3. Scott and I are at 3. Mark's at 4. Landon's at 2. So it's an even split across the board. I'm going to flip it over to Landon to make the case for Miles Sanders over David Montgomery, because I do want to hear that. And then we'll go to Mark and see why he's got him ranked a little bit lower.
Yeah, one thing I will say, the Bears, what we know about the Bears is they can make a relevant running back. Jordan Howard put up amazing numbers when he got the opportunity in Chicago. And historically, the Eagles haven't had a really good running back for a while. And J.J. wasn't that guy. Those knee problems for him really caught up to him and his injuries issues. But Miles Sanders was my number 1 ranked running back coming into the draft. He had a diverse portfolio. He can run through the tackles. He can catch out of the backfield. He was behind one of the best running backs of our generation. So he didn't get a chance to really show some college production for years to come. But when he did, he really produced. The only problem is that he is behind, I guess, Jordan Howard, proven NFL running back. But my ranking is more on long term. And I agree, if we're doing redraft, it'd be hard for me to pass up Montgomery in a redraft league and not take Miles Sanders. But I think Montgomery just didn't really blow me away, and he was taken in the 3rd round, early 3rd round pick, and he's the guy that next year he could be overtaken by a new rookie, where I think Miles Sanders has that staying ability in Philadelphia, and their offense is better. I have more confidence in Carson Wentz and their ability to be a high-scoring offense, and I'm not the biggest Chicago fan. I think I've made that clear, and I didn't expect them to make the playoffs, and I'll die on that sword if I have to. I don't have a lot of faith in Trubisky either. So that's kind of where I stand on Miles Sanders and why I would have him ranked above.
Totally fair. Mark, what's the other side of the coin here?
So I will kind of reference you, Len, in there and say I do think that they have potential to be like a high-scoring elite offense in Philly. But historically speaking, running backs under Doug Peterson don't really get a whole lot of exclusive field time. That said, like last year was a constant question mark as to who was going to be the one receiving the carries in Philadelphia week to week. So, like, are we going to expect sort of the same thing between Sanders, Adams, Smallwood, Howard? Like, lots of these guys were good takes at certain moments throughout the season last year. But then there's just so much change in that offense. It's hard to really grasp onto any one thing to accredit success in that offense, except for their big guys like Zach Ertz, really. So that's where I stand here, is just there are too many flashy players and not enough consistency, especially for like the commitment that Doug Peterson's willing to put forth towards any one running back.
Yeah, I mean, they're almost like the Patriots in a sense. They game plan for whatever back's going to be able to get the job done, whoever's fresh. Like at certain times last year, we saw a slew of running backs, playing in this offense. We saw Corey Clement at times. We saw Wendell Smallwood. We saw Josh Adams take on a role. And now we've got Jordan Howard in town. We've got Miles Sanders being drafted to the team. There's a lot of guys in this backfield. And that's kind of something that scares me a little bit with Miles Sanders. And we've already come out, full disclosure, that his ranking at 3 is not a short-term position. It is more geared towards the long term, because over time, these guys are going to phase out, and the cream will rise to the top, like they always say, right? But that's just one thing to keep in mind is there's a lot of guys in this backfield, and it might be tough for Miles Sanders in 2019 to find that role.
Yeah.
Agree?
No,
Disagree?
I agree. And I mean, one thing that I will say about the Eagles, and everyone has a different opinion on Jordan Howard, who they traded for, but I do want to remind people, he's 24 years old. He rushed 250 times last year for 935 yards and 9 touchdowns. This isn't a broken veteran on his last leg,
right?
Just trying to stay in the league. This is a running back who age-wise is really about to hit those prime years that he has to directly contend with. So just based on that fact alone, I think there is a risk if you're looking at this as any type of short play. Like you said, it would be a long-term play, but you can't discredit a guy like Jordan Howard and say, oh, he'll be there for a season, maybe 2, but like he'll overtake him very quickly. I think it could happen, but it could also be a very real battle of these two guys. And I don't think Jordan Howard's a guy who's going to, take a backup role easily.
Right.
And you're right. I think people are really, and Scott, I think I'm starting to change my mind a little bit. People are discounting what Jordan Howard's ability is. And I think there could be a pretty good tier break between the top 2 guys, basically on this year, especially on redraft leagues and what we see production now. And if you're going after, like for me, a guy like Miles Sanders, I'm probably not going to get him in our dynasty draft, but I can potentially buy low on him at the end of the season when he doesn't produce that much, maybe. And then I'll get my guy that I like,
You're very conniving in that way, Landon.
He is.
Very, very sneaky.
So we brought up Jay Ajayi's name, and that's kind of, we'll take a quick break from the rookies here. That's a guy that is still a free agent, still not with a team. What the hell's going on with Jay Ajayi?
I think he's out of the league, personally.
Really? It's crazy.
Wow, that's bold.
He's only 25 years old, but why hasn't a team taken a risk on him?
I mean, he's worked out with a couple teams. I think just for the reasons that we stated, he didn't work out in Philly just because there was too much to go around. I don't think he works well in a committee situation. We saw what he did in Miami when Lamar Miller went down and was able to get the rock a ton. I mean, he had a fantastic season. I think he's just a guy that has to get the ball, but I know he's worked out with a couple teams. I believe the Falcons were interested, as well as, funny enough, the Texans. So he could be coming in to eat up some Lamar Miller time again, if Lamar Miller's even going to be playing a full season. But yeah, it's a guy to keep an eye on. I picked him up in Dynasty just on the off chance that he did land somewhere, but nothing as of yet. He's still a free agent.
Well, and the last time he played basically a full season, he went over 1,200 yards. So he is 25, and much like this is the season of coach talk right now, it's also the season of, I think, some people overreacting when people are not on NFL rosters, because I remember all last season rostering Adrian Peterson because I just believed, this guy is going to find a place and he's going to be on the field. And you know what? It worked out pretty well, just holding on to a roster spot.
Yeah. I mean, I think the struggle right now with Jay Ajayi is that he It's no surprise. He's a fairly limited back. He's not a good pass catcher. He's not a good pass or run blocker. He's really like if you want to call him a home run hitter,
and he has injury issues,
he is that. And he is a little bit injury prone, so...
Well, there's a lot of knocks against him, but like almost anybody else in his type of situation, he is one unfortunate ACL tear on any of the teams away from being a relevant option.
Well, and that's the thing too. He could be a stash where somebody goes down and the team is desperate for a back. They're going to have to go out and get somebody. Just like the Jags went after Carlos Hyde last year.
They'll be looking for him.
Yeah, absolutely. So, he might be worth a stash if you have a taxi squad or if you've got a deeper bench. Why not? Why not? It is May. It is May. We're going to jump into number 4, and that's Darrell Henderson. Got drafted to the Rams. We have him at 5.544. Scott and Landon are the highest. Mark and I are the lowest. I'm going to speak on Darrell Henderson real quick as a Todd Gurley owner in Dynasty. Listen, I don't know if it's worth it for me to go out and get Darrell Henderson. I believe Todd Gurley will be fine. I'm not projecting him to be a world beater like he was the last couple of years. I think that this knee injury might take a toll on his production, might take a toll on the volume with which he sees the ball, carries the ball. But listen, I think taking Darrell Henderson really early in a rookie draft is a little bit of an overreaction to the whole Todd Gurley news. I don't think he'll be on the field a whole lot this year. But there are some people that believe that's that side of the story. So, I think as a preventative measure, if you wanted to handcuff Gurley with Henderson in a dynasty league, go for it. But in a redraft league, leave Darrell Henderson on the waiver wire. That's my personal opinion. Scoop him up if anything does happen to Todd Gurley, but don't go ahead and waste your 13th, 14th round pick on Darrell Henderson, because I just don't think he's going to be relevant unless Todd Gurley is actually out.
Does anyone else have a different take on Todd Gurley? Are we more concerned than what Mac is? Is he's looking on the bright side? Because I think that's where opinions might differ.
Yes, I'm very much on the opposite side of Mac as someone who watched, much like him, the Rams, their great push through the playoffs and the way they handled Gurley in the single most important game of an NFL season. I must say my confidence is not as high as his that things will not be drastically different in the near future. That's why I ranked Henderson at number 4. I talk about these situations sometimes as kind of the home run swings for dynasty plays, just because of how good the Rams offense actually is. It's a very stable, explosive offense that I feel you can slot different running backs into, and they will still be a good offense. The type of injury that Gurley has is one that I don't think is going to get better. If it's arthritis in a knee and you've made a name for yourself, with those knees, juking guys, running guys over, I really don't see the volume. And even if he does get it this year, once again, these rankings really for me are all based on more dynasty type of plays, because if you are drafting a rookie like Darrell Henderson in your redraft league at anything but a very late round, you're probably in trouble already, to be quite honest. If you think you're slotting him in week 1 as your lead back on a redraft team, you probably should hang it up already. But as far as a dynasty team goes, when it's the type of injuries that Gurley's dealing with, long-term injuries that are going to just continue to get worse, I don't think it's too much of an overreaction to try to get this guy. And not to say you're hoping against Todd Gurley. I like him a lot as a player, but what I saw in the playoffs spoke to me of as a coach and a GM that has kind of lost trust in his physical ability right now. And maybe I'm reading too much into it, but
I think
that's why he went. That's why he went up my board, and we will find out very early on next season who's right here, Mac.
My only thing is that if the Rams were that concerned about Gurley and they needed somebody desperately for next year, why wouldn't they go out and get somebody higher than pick 70? Like, why not go out and get Miles Sanders or David Montgomery?
I think they're just a smart team to draft like that. In the third round, I think that is pretty high. With their third pick, I think that shows that they do have some concern. And they drafted a running back with some pretty elite college production. He, 2017, over 1,000 yards. And last year, 1,900 yards. He's an explosive back. He's
playing for Memphis. He's averaging 9 yards a carry. Like, come on, let's be serious.
For 2 consecutive years.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, college football is fairly weak when it comes to being able to get to the edge. Like, if you watch college football at all, you know that you can get to the edge pretty much at any time and you can break off big runs. It's not like in the NFL where every single guy can get to the edge at the same pace. I mean, it takes an elite level back to be able to do that. I'm not taking anything away from Darrell Henderson. Yeah, 1,900 yards, 22 touchdowns, 9 a carry. That's fantastic. But who rushes for almost 2,000 yards on 214 touches? That just shows me that, like, his competition was weak. I don't think he's, like, that good. You know what I mean?
I still think they drafted him fairly high to make you somewhat concerned.
Yeah. Look, I'm not saying that Todd Gurley, like I said when I opened, I don't think Todd Gurley is going to go out and be a world beater again, but I certainly don't think that he's going to be off the field. Like, I think some people are reading a little bit too much into this situation, just like people are with, how good McCole Hardman could be in Kansas City in the place of Tyreek Hill. Like, it's an overreaction at this point, I think.
Yeah.
Only time will tell on this one.
Marky, what are your thoughts?
Break the tie here, Mark.
You guys you're all such good orators. I'm not going to take away from any of the points you've made. But Los Angeles did lose 2 big O-linemen due to age and free agency. And let's just hope the young men on that line that replaced them are going to do as good of a job as the vets that preceded them, because frankly, you could have thrown any running back in that backfield last year and they could have walked away with a 100-yard game. So okay. Yeah, I think there's a lot of variables to think about right now. That's all.
Number 5 consensus rank is Devin Singletary of the Buffalo Bills. We've got him. I've got him at 4, actually ahead of Darrell Henderson. Mark at 6, Scott at 5, Landon at 7, the furthest down on him. I'll make my case real quick, flip it over to Landon. I've got him a little bit higher ranked just because of who he shares the backfield with. We've got Frank Gore, 36, LaShawn McCoy, 31. LaShawn McCoy, we have to remember that legal trouble with his child and his, ex-fiance. That still looms. We don't know what the outcome of that is going to be. It might pop up, rear its ugly head in the future. So we don't know what's going on with LaShawn McCoy legally. Frank Gore's 36. I mean, he is the infinity stone. He just kind of keeps going and he seems unbreakable. But at some point, this storied career has to come to an end. And then you've got TJ Yeldon in the mix, but TJ Yeldon serves a different role in that offense. We saw when Leonard Fournette was absent in Jacksonville that he couldn't be the between the tackles kind of guy. He is a satellite back, gets it done in space. So I don't think TJ Yeldon presents any threat to Singletary. So, behind 2 backs that are in their 30s, I think Singletary finds himself in a situation where he could be relevant this year at some point, if not next season for sure. The other knock, I'll flip it over to Landon, but you could say that he's not the best back. He could be replaced by somebody else in next year's draft or the year after that, and I totally get that too. But as of right now, I think I'm a little bit more bought into Singletary than I am Henderson.
Yeah, for me, it's going from the Rams to the Bills is just such a significant drop in the points scored per game and the electric offense. And Todd Gurley last year was arguably one of the best running backs per games played. And it's just, I don't think Devin Singletary is that good of a back anyways. His workout metrics, like, people thought he was going to be drafted fairly high. The film grinders seem to love Singletary, but then he just had an absolute crap on the field in the combine. And I think those are just going to make it more difficult for him to get in front of two 30-year-old running backs on a team that we're not really sure. It depends if you believe in the quarterback and the system and what their role is. I'm not a big Bills guy either, and in an offense that is kind of a stay away for me, except if you're going after a rushing quarterback.
In Josh Allen. I mean, I understand that. The Bills were number 4 in the league in rushes ran. So they are a pass adverse team. They like to run the ball. They've got Josh Allen, who's very mobile as a quarterback. I think they want to run the ball. I mean, they brought in John Brown, Cole Beasley. They've got Zay Jones still there. Robert Foster had a great end of season, who, if you guys want to tune into, I was on the Draft Room pod a couple times this week, Tuesday, and there's one dropping Friday as well. So if you guys want to go check that out, we talk about Robert Foster and Zay Jones a little bit, but I think it's just like an offense that wants to run the ball, and that's kind of why I'm a little bit higher on Singletary, because I think there's just, with those aging guys there might be a little bit more opportunity for him. That's pretty much where my argument kind of ends for him.
Now, Devin Singletary kind of strikes a chord as almost a Shady McCoy-esque running back. So he could be eyed up as maybe a potential handcuff if you have McCoy. But you can look at his school stats and just see how astonishing they were. But that is also a testament to something you just said, is that, these college defenses are not NFL caliber. So what we see in their school stats only tells the tale from their pre-pro status.
I mean, I'm not gonna make that argument for Devin Singletary. Like, you want to go back to his 2017 year, 300 attempts, 1,900 yards, 32 touchdowns. Like, it's just crazy. But he's playing for Florida Atlantic in one of the worst college football conferences in the country. So yeah, competition's not that great. It's not NFL level, but I mean, he's got in 3 seasons at Florida Atlantic, he's got 66 touchdowns. Like, it's just crazy.
I think you give this kid some time to develop behind someone like Shady McCoy, and you can have someone like the player LaShawn was for so many years in that offense. Like, recently, he's been on a decline, but he can't get past the defensive line. He gets smashed up at the line, and you can see all the injuries he's gone down with over the years. Like, we have all had McCoy on a team at one point or another, right? Can I say that about the 4 people?
Oh God, yeah. He's won me a fantasy championship before.
So there's lots of ifs in the situation, but he could possibly be a rebirth of a Shady McCoy we once had.
Yeah,
interesting.
I believe in that too. I mean, I see his upside. I see his potential and the opportunity, but I get it. Like, I understand the argument against him. I totally get it. So before we go, I'm going to give you guys a chance to make a case for a guy outside of our top 5 who you think that could have some relevance in the future, somebody that you would want to stash for a longer term play. I'm going to kick it over to Mark. I know that he probably wants to go with his boy that he's got ranked number 3. So I'm going to flip it over to you, Mark.
This young kid coming out, his name's Frank Gore. I'm expecting a lot.
Don't hold your breath on that.
No. But you're right. You're right to question where I have this guy ranked too. So this guy on our consensus ranking is sitting at 5.75. Max got him at 7, Scott at 7, Landon at 6. I've got him at 3, and that's Damian Harris of the New England Patriots. So you might be wondering why I have him so high.
I love this.
Simply put, I just think any Joe off the street could walk into that program and be the next starting running back in New England. You never know week to week who is going to get the share of the carries. And we know that they did draft Sony Michel high last year, and he did. Mm-hmm. He did really well, especially in the clutch moment. James White, quietly, such an amazing player for that team. Fantasy value through the roof. But those guys have clearly defined roles. And the OC and Bill Belichick know exactly how to use them. So I have them high because, an early breakout for a player like Damian Harris could mean value on a consistently dominant offense.
Mm-hmm. And I think dynasty owners that own Sony Michel should be somewhat worried. And if I was them, I would sell on Sony Michel. He just didn't catch any balls out of the backfield. I think Damian Harris could be that guy. Although Josh Jacobs was generally the pass-catching running back at Alabama, I think Damian Harris could do it all. I think he could be a better running back than Sony Michel. That might be a hot take to a lot of people, but if I was a Sony Michel owner, and I'm not, I would maybe sell high on his obviously Super Bowl winning performance and how many touchdowns he scored last year.
Fair.
I don't have an individual in this class outside of the ones we've mentioned that I'd really, make a big play to get. Really, I'd be looking at handcuffs, with maybe Alexander Mattson with the Vikings and whatnot. Unfortunately, with Cook's injury history, you could be looking at a battle there of the RB2s and 3s if history repeats itself, which I hope it won't. And maybe somebody like Snell Jr. there with the Steelers because, we still have to see how Connor performs this year as he came out of the gates hard last year, and then it seemed to kind of taper off as a full season, took hold. So there's a couple question marks, but I don't think it's a particularly deep draft this year for running backs.
Yeah, you're not too far off, Scotty. And my guy that I have ranked is Justice Hill. I think that's a really good fit. He's the running back for Baltimore, and I think he's a really good complement to Mark Ingram in that backfield. And he had really great production at Oklahoma State. 3 consecutive years, almost 1,000 yards, over 5.5 a carry. That is actually a tough division. And I think he is kind of a sneaky pick. I do like Mark Ingram this year, and I think he's going to be good for fantasy in that system. But he's getting up there in age, and if Justice Hill can make a name for himself in that offense, I think he could overtake an undrafted Gus Edwards and be the guy in the very fast. That offense in Baltimore is quick, and I think he fits really well.
It's definitely going to be a lot of running going on there.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with a guy that is not so popular. I'm going to go with the guy who led the SEC, one of the best football classes in the country in rushing last year, and that's Travion Williams out of Texas A&M. He was drafted to the Bengals in the 6th round, really, really late pick. Rodney Anderson was also drafted by the Bengals. So you got a couple guys behind Joe Mixon now, but I feel like Travion Williams could come in and fill that, Giovanni Bernard type role. The guy is special. I mean, if you watch his tape, fantastic. Not the fastest guy, only ran like a 4.5, but he's small, 5'8", packs a punch, tough runner, and can get it done passing, running game. Really, really like his talent, and I know Joe Mixon's there and he's holding down the fort, but I think he could be a really nice complement to the Bengals, and I'll probably be trying to look to stash him in Dynasty for future years.
What about your boy Dexter Williams?
My boy Dexter. Dexter, thanks for introing the show. Happy to have him on the Packers. I think for fantasy, he finds himself in a little bit of a tough spot behind Aaron Jones, who should, see a ton of work this year. Some will say that Jamal Williams will also be involved in that backfield, to the tune of a 50-50 split. So tough to say, but I don't see too many first team, second team reps for Dexter this year, unfortunately.
Dang, maybe
he's still my boy though. He's still my boy though. Yeah,
he's the cool one of the pack.
101 next season.
Well, this is good, man. Always good to talk rookies. I'm glad that we got the running backs out of the way. We're going to try our best to get all of our rankings up. We'll probably have time to do one more show, like a quarterback and tight end show in one, and then you'll have pretty much all of the fantasy positions covered before your dynasty drafts happen. I know ours happens in what? We're looking at just under 2 weeks here. Yeah, so that's going to be wicked.
May 31st.
May 31st coming up quick. Oh, no, it is the 29th, right?
Jeez.
Yeah, so we're looking, just about 2 weeks.
You should have been quiet there. Could have got some great picks off me.
We're going to work feverishly over the last 2 weeks to get our rankings solidified for those dynasty rookie drafts. Ours is 5 rounds, so we'll have those up on our Patreon. If you are a patron, you'll have full access to those, and if you aren't, you should consider, because that'll help us keep this thing going. But boys, glad we could do this. I'll get all four guys together. We'll make a habit of this moving forward, and it was good talking rookie running backs with you guys.
You know, I'm just happy. I'm just happy to come back with my best friends. You know, I hope that shows through the listeners that the four of us are really close friends, and if only Miles didn't suck at fantasy football, he would be a part of the group.
Shots fired.
He is terrible.
Just like Matt, right, Scotty?
Go back to
That's even worse.
All right, guys, it's been fun.
All right,
we'll see you guys next week, next Saturday. Enjoy your long weekend if you're in Canada, and we'll see you guys soon.
Bye-bye.
Peace.
Later.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at SMS_fantasy. Support this independent podcast at patreon.com/SaturdayMorningSnap.